In the year 2023, scalp inflammation, scalp disorders like alopecia areata, CCCA, and so many other different scalp disorders have taken over the black hair community, and there is one common denominator that most people don't want to accept. And today we are going to dive deep into the world of microorganisms. The human scalp is home to various microorganisms and yeast. On average, there can be dozens of different species, with estimates ranging from 100 to 1,000 different species that can all be present on the human scalp at one time. Now, these microorganisms play a role in maintaining your scalp's health because you are literally a city. Remember the movie Moses Jones? Well, it wasn't just a movie. That's what's going on your scalp right now. Its overall benefit or detriment is going to be dependent on the overall environment that you set for these microorganisms. And today I'm going to tell you every microorganism, or at least about 20 of them, that are living on your scalp right now at any present time. And I'm going to let you know how the constant application over the years of oils and butters and grease of any form, even though some people think that there are some forms of oil that won't feed these bacteria, that is not true. So today we are going to break that down, and I'm going to give you a source outside of myself that is a licensed dermatologist that has broken things down. So this is going to be a long one. Get your pen and paper, get something to sip on, because you're going to need a happy smile for this one, because this is going to be a long one. But after today, debate's over. I'll go ahead and place the name of each species here, and then you can go ahead and look it up yourself on another day. But I want you to be your own guru and your own scientist. I'm just putting the information out there. I am not making anything up. This species competes with other bacterium on the scalp for space and nutrients, and this overall will control the overall health and environment of your scalp. Because if the host, you, makes a favorable space for this bacterium, then there will be an equal balance on the scalp. But again, we'll get into how oil plays a role. Number 2, this will prevent infections on the scalp when this bacteria is balanced and able to do its job. Number 2, this one is commonly associated with acne. This bacterium metabolizes sebum, and sebum is the natural oil, aka wax, that is produced within the sebaceous gland of your hair follicle. And you have sebaceous glands all over your body except for the palms of your hands, your elbows, your knees, and the soles of your feet. This species helps to regulate your sebum levels. Number 3, some species are present on the human scalp, and they aid the body against fighting against different pathogens that can seek to cause different scalp and follicle inflammations long term within the human scalp. This contributes to your skin's number 1 defense, your scalp specifically. Number 4, this species aids the scalp at maintaining its natural pH. Number 5 has made it to YouTube and is really not understood in any way, shape, or form, because the purpose of this species on the scalp is to keep sebum in check. This is a form of yeast, and its number 1 function on the human scalp is to regulate the scalp's sebum production, right? So if this species goes unchecked and is allowed to overgrow and is allowed to overpopulate, then what ends up happening is the scalp ends up getting what we call dandruff. And most people get confused. They think dandruff is dry scalp. Dandruff is not dry scalp. Dandruff is an overproduction of this form of yeast. And when this form of yeast becomes inflamed, when it goes unchecked, when it is not kept properly, then it results in certain follicle infections like dandruff. Dandruff is a mild version of seborrheic dermatitis. But let's keep going. Number 6. This species is really important because its number one role is metabolizing the body's sebum levels. This bacterium can also control and monitor the body's response to different inflammation, to different forms of inflammation. So it's really important that this bacteria stays balanced and is not allowed to overgrow and is not killed too much through different products that end up killing bacteria, good and bad. Let's keep going. Now, this bacteria is involved in the degradation of certain organic compounds on the skin and can contribute to the overall balance of the microbiome of the microbes on the human scalp, because your body is a city and we have so many more to go. Some strains of this can be harmful, but others are a part of the skin's normal bacterium, and it helps to protect the skin against different pathogens and different invaders. So it's like a defense system. But if it's too much of those overbrand, then things can get a little bit too much, This species contributes to the breakdown of organic matter on the scalp and contributes to the overall balance of the scalp's microbes. And this plays a role in maintaining the scalp's microbial diversity. Now, this is found in multiple environments, including the skin, and it is responsible for nutrient cycling and can be really influential at influencing the skin's overall composition of the microbiome. Now, this one is really important. Number 11. This one here is a part of the skin's natural microbiome community, and it's responsible for preventing the colonization of a lot of different bacteria that are on the scalp. It keeps everything in check and balance. This will prevent the colonization of other harmful pathogens and other harmful bacteria that could just be floating around in the atmosphere. This one here is similar to a lot of the other skins, different species of bacteria that live on the skin, but this one again is responsible for balancing the skin's defense mechanisms against the balance of the good bacteria and the bad bacteria and everything else. While this one here is commonly associated with the microbiome that lives in the gut, this can also be associated with the scalp. When it's on the scalp, it contributes to the regulation of the scalp's natural pH. So it's not bad. As you're seeing now, not all bacteria is bad. Not all of it is bad. There is a balance. You need a balance of these bacteria. It's only when the bacteria goes unchecked and when it is overgrown and it's not a balance that it becomes an issue or something that can cause a disease or inflammation. But let's keep going. Now, these bacteria have antimicrobial compounds that prevent different growths of certain bacteria that can injure the scalp or the hair follicles in general. They inhibit the growth of other bacteria in general, so they prevent things from even starting, preventing other bacteria outside of the bacteria that are already there. It prevents them from even growing. This contributes to your overall scalp health. This is why if they're not on balance, things go awry. Number 15 is also known for their role in foot odor. This bacteria lives on the feet too, and I've talked about this as well in a video. Link in the description box below. On the scalp, this bacteria, this species contributes to the breakdown of sebum and sweat on the scalp. So when you sweat or when you have an overproduction of sebum, there's already a species of bacteria on your scalp that is already there to handle that. You do not need an extra oil or butter to do this. Your body is already doing it. Number 16 is one that again most of us have heard of before, and this is its job. While typically associated with fungal infections, right? Some forms of this species inhabit the scalp and don't cause any form of a problem in general. It's not a whole lot lot of big stuff that it does to benefit the scalp, but it'll be there. It's a bacteria that's there, and as long as your practices are in a certain way that do not cause the bad bacteria to overgrowth, that doesn't cause an imbalance, then it's not really a big deal, right? Now this next one here, not even, although some strains of this can be pathogenic, now when it is found on the scalp and it is when it's balanced, right, when there's a healthy environment, it's just a part of the skin's natural microbiome, and it just contributes to the diversity of all of the different types of bacteria that are on the scalp. Remember, we're talking about I'm going over 20 of about 1,000 that have been identified. This next species is really interesting because they play a role in helping the scalp to break down the presence of any carbohydrates that are on the scalp. This may play a role in maintaining a healthy scalp environment by breaking down those complex carbohydrates that could be on the scalp. Now, this species is another one that is amazing because it acts as a defense to the scalp at preventing the colonization of pathogens and the colonizations of other bacteria that you let overgrow. Number 20. Number 20 is one that we have talked about on my channel a lot. I have videos on this form of bacteria quite a few times, and this is the same exact type of bacteria that causes athlete's foot, staph infections, and folliculitis. I have a video on that. Link in the description box. This is one of the most common residents of the skin's microbiome, and it plays a really important role in the skin's immune regulation. So it's extremely important, but baby, if you let it overgrow. Within the scalp, you have something called a sebaceous gland, and the sebaceous gland produces sebum. Now, sebum is the number one driving force and fuel for the skin's natural bacteria that lives there. Its favorite food is sebum. That is why it is produced, and that is why there are also different species of the bacteria that lives on your scalp that its literal job is to control the amount of sebum that is present on the scalp. There is another species that's there to break it down. There's another species of there to make sure that the bacteria doesn't colonize. Your body is a literal city. Like, there's nothing additional that you need to do to it. So now let's jump into this next part and figure out how adding oils and butters and different things of that nature can lead to different scalp disorders, different follicle infections, and all types of things. There are certain bacteria on the scalp that metabolize the lipids within the sebum that end up making it the perfect balance for your hair, skin, and nails, because it's everywhere. However, an excessive oil production can widely contribute to the overgrowth and the overpopulation and the colonization of these bacteria and these different forms of fungus. This is why it's so important to have healthy patterns and healthy routines that do not include clogging the scalp with oil. And if you are going to use oil, it is supposed to be used in a very specific way for a very short period of time. Now, adding extra oils to the scalp will directly contribute to the overgrowth of certain pathogens and certain bacteria in the scalp because their favorite food is oil. Now, all of the different benefits and botanicals and different things that you guys learn about oils, they're great for you, right? Because you're a living organism, but understand that your scalp has multiple thousands, hundreds, for when we're talking about the scalp, hundreds of different living organisms. So the same properties that it has for you, it also has for that bacteria that lives on the scalp. This is why it is imperative that you do not put oil on the scalp, because even though your intention is to kill bacteria or your intention is to moisturize the scalp, what you're actually doing is feeding these bacteria. You're feeding all of these different species of bacteria because your scalp does not need extra oils. I just went over 20, right? There are up to 1,000 different species of bacteria on your scalp, and none of these 20 that I named had any negative properties. The only time any of these bacteria have negative properties is when the host, you, cause these bacteria to either become overgrown, or your constant use of different herbs on the hair, your constant use of essential oils on the scalp end up killing off the good bacteria and end up feeding the bad bacteria, giving the scalp an opportunity to have a colonization of these bacteria. So this is why it is so important to not have different oils and butters on the scalp, because they do end up feeding all of these different bacteria by all of these different species that live on the scalp. You end up causing them to colonize. Okay, this overgrowth of bacteria can lead to a lot of different infections or scalp disorders, and to name a few, folliculitis. I have a video here, so make sure you head over and watch the video. This folliculitis is an overgrowth of this bacterium that lives on the scalp naturally, right? And then next up, when we have seborrheic dermatitis. Seborrheic dermatitis is an overgrowth of this yeast that naturally lives on the scalp. The next one up is acne, and acne is an overgrowth of this bacteria or this species. Scalp psoriasis is another one, but with scalp psoriasis, there isn't enough data, to be honest. When you go in with certain issues, all you really talk about is the cause, like my skin is balding, or my hair is balding, my skin is dry, it's flaking, but nobody really tells their doctors all of the practices that they've had over the last 20 years. So the doctor's never able to make that connection, and that's why most people or most doctors are still not able to find those connections, understanding why all of these different things are happening. But I think that's the thing that most of us get confused about, because we don't understand that we have to know the trigger. Because, for example, seborrheic dermatitis is the end result, but first there was inflammation, and that inflammation didn't happen on its own. That inflammation had a trigger, and every time the trigger is oil. And then some people will say, oh well, my trigger is hormones. Yes, your trigger hormones is a really big part of it too, and I have videos on that. But we'll sit and learn all of the information, because things have the social media has turned everything into like this instant quick fix thing, right? And for that reason, nobody really takes the time to really sit there and dig out information the way that it is supposed to be dug out, right? So I gave you 20 different bacteria that live on the scalp. If you want 20 more, then head over to my blog, because I list a few more over there. But let's keep moving along. Now that you know about 20 of the visitors that you have that are permanent residents of your scalp, now you need to know, how do you regulate them? Because they're not going anywhere. They're not bad. It's only bad when you don't control things and when you allow them to overgrow. So let's go ahead and get into a couple of ways that you can maintain the healthy environment for your scalp. Is going to be regular washing. The easiest way to maintain balance of all of these different bacteriums that live on your scalp is to shampoo your hair. The reason that people say don't use harsh shampoos, right, is not because shampoos are bad. It is because if you are a person, people shampoo their hair every day, like twice a day. Some people shampoo their hair in the morning and at night, every day. So those are the people that when you see things like, oh, shampoos are bad, shampoo will dry out your hair, those are the people that they're talking to. But if you are a person that shampoo your hair once a week or even twice a week, they're not talking to you. The sebum is going to flow. It's going to flow. The sebum is regulated, but your practices have to allow. So next up, number 2 is going to be pH balanced shampoo. It's not that, oh, no sulfates and sulfates are bad. No, you want to find shampoos that do not have too many ingredients, meaning I don't want you to have shampoos that have all of these honeys and oils and butters and things. Even though it sounds nice, you guys, there is a reason why professional products, the products that have always been in Sally's, the products that have always been, not Sally's, the products that have always been in Cosmoprof, there's a reason why those products were not full of butters and oils, because professional cosmetologists and chemists and the industry has always understood that all of these bacteria live on the human scalp, and not just black scalps, on the human scalp, period. So by adding all of these different oils and butters to products, it ends up putting them in overdrive. This is why you don't see most licensed cosmetologists using all of these shea butter products and all of that. It's not something that we're going to do. Why? Because A, is going to weigh the hair down and not make the hair flowy, and B, it is going to feed all of the different forms of bacteria that live on the scalp. So licensed cosmetologists that understand the science of hair, because a lot don't, but licensed cosmetologists that understand the science of hair do not use products that are full of oils and butters, because it is my job to control and balance all of your scalp's microbes before you walk out of the shop. And to be honest, who is really trying to get that whole run through at the shop, and who's trying to give it when you have all of those clients? You just trust that your clients trust you to do your job. But when you get just a regular shampoo and conditioner, I'll leave my Amazon store in the description box below, because it's so simplistic, you guys. Like, just get a regular shampoo and conditioner, right? And that is more than enough to control the bacteria, so that way that it stays balanced and it doesn't colonize. Like, it's not that deep. Shampoo and conditioner. Again, avoid overwashing. Overwashing is not washing your hair once a week. That's not overwashing. That's not overwashing. That's normal washing. Overwashing would be washing your hair every single day. Like, that's overwashing. Normal would be no more than like every 3 days. Any more than every 3 days is a little excessive, but every 3 to 4 days is not a big deal. But when they said that, they didn't mean you overwashing your hair if you wash it once a week. They meant you overwashing it if you washing it 3 times a day. Number 4 is going to be use conditioner sparingly. When I say this, that does not mean conditioner is bad. It just means that conditioner is something that is not supposed to be, like, you're not supposed to pour puddles of conditioner in your hand. Like, that's not supposed to happen. You're just supposed to use about, I always tell people, about a quarter size amount of conditioner in your hand. Your hair is almost microscopic. It's not microscopic, but your hair is a very, very, very thin fiber. You do not need that much product. Your hair shaft, the human hair shaft, can only absorb 36% of whatever you put on it. This is why, even though I'm saying this, there will be some people that are like, oh no, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Some oils go on the scalp. Listen, the same oils, all oils and butters, all of these different oils and things that you guys are putting in your hair were pressed from herbs. It was first an herb. They pressed the herb to get the oil out. But did you know that even though your scalp is only going to absorb 36% of what you put on it, not to mention if the follicle is already blocked, if the pores are blocked, the follicle doesn't get anything. So if you're constantly greasing the scalp, there are layers and layers of dead skin and all of that on top of your pores. So most of the time, all of these oils and butters that y'all are putting on the scalp are never getting to the follicle, and ever. Y'all think that as soon as you put something on your scalp, it goes to the follicle, and that's not true. You have your pore, then you have your hair root and the hair shaft, and then at the bottom you have the blood, that the bulb that reaches the blood supply. So it has a really far way to go, you guys. That's why it's so important for you to maintain the natural microbiome of your scalp, so that way you don't have an overgrowth or a overrange of of bacteria. And again, it's important, it's always balanced. When you do shampoo, you use shampoo to cleanse. When you use conditioner, you do conditioning to balance. You're balancing the pH level back, and then you're going to leave it alone until the next time you have to balance it again on the next wash day. It's so simplistic, but the more things you do and the more steps you try to skip, the more complicated you make your end result. Avoid heavy styling products. We've talked about it in the video linked in the description box below about polymers, and different styling products are polymers. It's not that it is a bad thing, but styling products like gels and creams and grease and all of those things are for the hair shaft. Never ever for the scalp. They go on the hair shaft, and even when on the hair shaft, they need to be in very small amounts. Why? The hair shaft can only absorb 36% of whatever you put on it, so anything over that 36% goes straight to the scalp, and this causes all of the different forms of scalp inflammation I just told you about. Your diet is so important, because I need you to remember that a lot of these triggers are hormonal. You can have two triggers. You can either have triggers from the things that you're putting on your scalp. You can have your hormonal triggers like we talked about in these videos here, links in the description box, or you can have triggers from putting oils and butters on your scalp. But overall, either way, it will cause stress, right? The stress hormone cortisol to start taking off, right? Which we're going to talk about in another video coming really soon. But it's really important that you know these things, because if you have a balanced diet that keeps all of your levels controlled, then you're less likely to have spikes in your hormones and releasing different hormones like cortisol and all of those different things. So make sure that you do use something to manage stress, like my peach potion in Simple Apothecary. Peach potion is ashwagandha, which is an herb from Ayurvedic medicine, and Gotu, which is an herb from African herbalism. So these two combined together are an amazing adaptogen that helps the body to deal with stress better. I have a video on that coming really soon, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, make sure you check the blog post on this blend to learn more about it, link in the description box below. But lowering stress levels will widely affect your hormones and so many other things. Be to protect your scalp. So even though braids and stuff are great and all of that, it's great, but your hair isn't naturally parted all the time for a reason. Like, your hair is there to protect your scalp. That's why your hair is on your head. So even though braids and stuff are cool, sometimes it works against us, because most of the time of the year that you get braids are the time of the year that you need protection, that your scalp needs the most protection. So that's when you're like outside in the summertime, like when it's hot. So be careful in the summertime getting braids, because it's really important that you don't expose your scalp to the sun like that. So again, that is where the whole practice of greasing the scalp came from, because when we're real and when we're realistic and we remember, and our ancestors, not all black people were slaves, but the ones that constantly are greasing the scalp, that comes from that ancestry. And I need you to remember that our ancestors were extremely smart and resourceful, and they were in the fields all night, so they would grease their scalps to protect their scalps from sun exposure, not because it was healthy for the hair. But now that you're no longer in that situation, it's time to leave that practice alone and replace it with something else. So you just want to make sure that when your scalp is exposed to the sun, that you just cover it, not with products, not with oils, not with butters, because even though you'll be protecting your scalp from sun exposure by greasing the scalp, you'll also be feeding all of the different forms of bacteria and different forms of bacteria that are not supposed to be there, and you will be preventing the forms of bacteria that prevent all of the different microbes from colonizing. You'll prevent them from from doing their job, and you'll make the microbes that want to colonize even stronger. So this is why you really have to keep an eye on that. Lastly is going to be to consult with a dermatologist if you feel that you have maybe done too much and you are at a point where you could possibly need any type of surgery, or if you see have any bleeding, pulsating, severe redness, really raised bumps on the skin, I really encourage you to go see a dermatologist, because when you catch it at the right point, you can fix it. But if you allow the follicle to get to a certain point and you keep supercharging it with oil, you're just gonna make it worse. I love you guys, but the worst thing that you can do is to put different oils and butters on the scalp when your scalp is inflamed. It is different if you use a very an essential oil mixture given to you by a really educated professional, and it is something that is only put on the scalp and used as a treatment, like on there for like 20 to 30 minutes tops, and then shampooed out with a great detoxifying shampoo, and then followed up by a conditioner, right? So it is so important that you do that you remove these things from the scalp, because if you don't, what you'll end up doing is causing a serious imbalance in the good and bad bacteria on the scalp. So it's so important. All right, next up, even though I know that this video has been so long, this video is probably going to be up like over 45 minutes long, because now lastly this is going to go off with me reading to you something from this wonderful dermatologist. She is from down south, and right now we are going to read this article together, and she bundles up everything that I have been saying for years in a nutshell. You can see right here the date that she published this article, but you can also go back on my channel for at least the last 7 years, and I've been saying the same exact thing. So it's so amazing that she was able to come through with this scientific information to validate everything that I just said in this video. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching. Let's go over here.
This article is by the masterful dermatologist Tiffany Mayo. Okay, I hope I'm saying her last name right. So let's go ahead and get into this. Seborrheic dermatitis is a common chronic inflammatory dermatitis affecting the face, scalp, and upper trunk, and has a significant negative impact on the quality of life. All right, so we talk all about, she goes over literally everything that I just talked about in this video, so we don't need to go over all of that. Then she also goes over everything about this form of yeast that we talked about. All right, the organisms consume fatty acids necessary for the proliferation and leave behind unsaturates that may cause irritation. In order to culture this yeast in a laboratory setting, the lipid supplement such as olive oil is required. Although no clinical studies have been done exploring the effects of hair oils on seborrheic dermatitis, in vitro, the studies evaluating the effects of the oils of this yeast growth have been performed. One study investigated the effects of corn oil, butter, olive oil, coconut oil, and other different oils, right? And the growth of this yeast. Now, they saw that within this study, what they were seeing was without the fatty acid, there was no growth. But all of their samples that had different oils added to that yeast saw a massive growth in that form of yeast. All right, natural oils have long been used on the skin, in skin of color patients for hair and skincare. In patients with tightly coiled patterns, the lubricating effects of oils reduce fiber friction and abrasive damage caused by grooming. Some oils may penetrate the hair shaft, filling in gaps and penetrating against damage from the shampoos. Now, again, as we talked about previously, that all goes into how much you're shampooing your hair. So if the rates and patterns that you have that will be put in place by a cosmetologist who knows what she's doing, or by a trichologist who knows what she or he is doing. These are things that would set up proper patterns, but if you don't have proper patterns, then you really misunderstand how to use these things. Recent literature has reported an increased incidence of seborrheic dermatitis among African American and West Africans, may be due to their hair patterns, infrequent shampooing, and excessive use of oils and pomades. Tighter curl patterns impede sebum traveling down the hair shaft, leading to oil buildup on the scalp. So what happens is not that the sebum can't travel down the hair shaft, it gets stuck because most people with naturally curly hair have practices that cause them not to comb their hair properly. But again, this dermatologist is only looking at the end result of the patterns and the practices, and the scientific portion that handles the patterns and the practices is the form of cosmetology, because it goes trichology, cosmetology, dermatology. So this is something that everybody really needs to understand. A trichology course is only a couple of weeks for some classes, and sometimes it could be a couple of months. Cosmetology is a couple of years, and then dermatology, we know that could be over a decade. So yeah. So seborrheic dermatitis is common in Black patients and can impact the quality of life. More research evaluating the effects of different hair oils and oil vehicles in seborrheic dermatitis are needed. So I just wanted to go over this really quick. You guys make sure you head over to my blog post and you can read through it in detail yourself, but I wanted to touch on some of those key points. But when you go into it and you read it, it's even more detailed. It's almost like me and her know each other and we do not. This article was written March in 2023. I have been saying these things, you guys, for over a decade now, and you guys can go back on my channel and look at the videos to prove it. We are going to do a full live reading through this whole entire article in detail and breaking it down. So make sure that if you have not done so already, you go ahead and subscribe to my channel and turn on your post notifications so you're notified when this video comes out.
There we go. So this is part one. I'm gonna have a whole series even going deeper into this. Our next one, I'm gonna break down the other 20 to you. If you want to learn a little bit more about all of the amino acids that go into your body to create and produce healthy hair, skin, and nails, then make sure you check this. Make sure you check out this ebook right here that teaches you the building blocks of your body. I love you guys so much. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this video, and until our next one, bye.